Hey, I'm just on my way back from Taliban. This is my Sunday driving job. I drop everybody off at church, wherever that may be, and then I usually try to go and have breakfast with my friend Michael, but he has not having any luck with his transportation, and still waiting for parts which normally would be off the shelf if he was at home in New Zealand, but of course he's not. So that's the point. So I haven't seen him again. We didn't meet up last Sunday. We used to meet up regular, but that was of course when we both had transportation. So I've been I've been looking at some of the comments that I get. You know, I get a ton of messages that come from people who are having a really rough time. Excuse me. And I just had one now where the man has really been ripped off. He's been ripped off like a multitude of times. He's one of these people who is fortunate enough to be able at various times to help, and he has helped our charity. He's helped many people that have been suffering here, and he's done it open-hearted and generously. So it means something to me that he is suffering. But here's the deal. He put the attitude of those who are suffering in a nutshell. I should just tell you that he's been ripped off by a Filipina, giving her a ton of money, and even though he's now seen the light and has broken off with that relationship, the family are still relentless in asking him for money. And as with those who are very good at asking for money from various people, they'll use various techniques. Medical is one. Someone's gone into hospital and is in dire need of being able to pay the bill. Children in need, all of that. Children in need is a button with us when we go around and we see people who are in trouble because of their own fault. We can't take that as the decider if they've got 4 or 5 kids who are suffering because of their parents' ineptitude. So it's real to me what is happening to him. But here's the deal. You cannot keep telling the stories about how you've been ripped off. I've used this as an example before. That I once happened in the middle of a conversation between a presenter and a woman that had obviously just told a terrible story about what had happened to her, and heaven knows what it was, but the presenter was a very wise woman, and she said to the woman, here's what I suggest that you do. You have suffered terribly. Your real life story is a heartbreaker. It would bring anyone to tears, as I'm sure in our audience people are in tears having listened to what happened to you. Now, this is what I suggest you do. Tell it to everyone. Tell that story to everyone. Tell it to the guy who makes a delivery of pizza. Tell it to your doctor. Tell it to your friends. Tell it to your relatives. Tell it to anyone who will or won't listen, and tell that story. And then, when you've told it to everyone, stop telling it. Don't tell it ever again. Don't relive it. Don't go through the pain again and again and again, which is what happens when you keep telling the story. So in other words, there's an end. There's an end point. when you are being a victim and you're playing the victim, you're playing what some people call poor me. If that is your role and you are playing poor me, oh, isn't it awful? You're reliving it. It's happening to you again. And if it's recent and there's still a huge amount of emotional charge or energy or misemotion attached to it, it's like a snowball. It just gets bigger and bigger. And then finally, you will actually get tired of telling. That's what should happen. You will eventually take off all of the emotion from what happened and you'll move on. Now here's the thing. None of us are special. If you're in the middle of some terrible thing, you're not special. This man, as I was about to say, he summed it up at the end of his message. He said, you and Alfred, why you thought that Alfred should be linked in with me, I don't know. Except for the fact that Alfred has now found a lady who not only loves him and takes care of him, but wants to marry him. Now, people look at me and say, wow, how lucky you are. Your young wife, she's beautiful and talented and wants to help and is in on your mission and she's keeping you young and. So this was given as an example. You see, you're fortunate, he said. You are fortunate. You lucked out. And let me tell you, it took a while to get to the state of being lucked out. I had my own suffering moments. I had my own heartache. I had my own loss when I left. When I left the US, I had lost everything. A lot of our haters love to hear this. Oh, he didn't have any arse in his trousers. He didn't have a pot to piss in. He didn't have a penny to his name. Well, that's right. I had very little when I came. And I soon got tired of telling people about that. I'm telling you now because it's part of the story. It's part of the example. It's part of explaining that none of us are special. We all have heartaches. We all have burdens. We all have things that have happened to us which are beyond belief, which every time we think of them, we might tear up. Like I lost my brother, and I can hardly talk about him without tearing up because I loved him and he was only 50 and now I've lost him. We all have these things and people tell me their stories. And I said to my friend, because he's a good man, I said, if you think that you're really special, if you think you're the only one with these extreme heartaches, which you obviously have, you've been ripped off, you've been lied to, you've been cheated, you've had it all, and it's cost you a lot of money. But if you think that you're on your own, think about what Sylvester Stallone said in his movie with Rocky Balboa. Rocky Balboa was listening to his son who was doing the poor me, the victim, how terrible it was to have a father who was famous and then to be judged by that. And Rocky said to him, it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up. Now, another example, we took our vehicle before we got the Raptor, which is instrumental as to why we bought such an expensive four-wheel drive vehicle, the best. We took our vehicle and the bill was like 45,000 pesos. Now it doesn't matter whether pesos is worth 50 to the dollar. Never mind about that. We live in pesos, not in dollars or pounds or whatever. We live in pesos, and 45,000 oranges is a lot, or bananas is a lot. And after that, we paid the bill, we suffered, we paid the bill. It wasn't even work done great. And we used to find ourselves talking about it. There's that man again, the one that charged us 45,000. I can't believe he charged us 45,000. How could he do that? And he wasn't even good, was it, darling? So we paid the bill, then we thought about it, and a few days later we talked about it, and we paid the bill again. And then a week later we talked about it again, and we relived it, and we paid the bill again and again and again and again. In the end, I said, you know, why are we paying the bill again? We paid it. It was weeks ago. Why are we paying it again? Metaphorically speaking. So, you want to pay the bill again? You can do it. You can do it as many times as you want. I had a friend in Florida who, he had a terrible situation with his wife. All that he ever talked about was his terrible situation with his wife. In the end, not me, but one of his friends said, you know, you're going to have to stop talking about this. Otherwise, you won't have any friends left. Because we're all getting worn out. Now we're suffering his marriage problems. Oh my God, I came away from there feeling 10 years older. That's probably, I'm actually only 27, but I've listened to a lot of sad stories, okay? So, we're not special. We're not special no matter how agonizing the stories are. If you want to know how agonizing some stories, how heartbreaking, how tear-jerking, how grief-stricken some stories can be, go back and find the videos that Beth and I have made of the kids that come to us for help on their education. Boy, you'll hear some hard stories. Stories of abandonment, of hunger, of having nowhere to live, having to move when the rain comes because there's no roof on the house, having families that have split, and now because they maybe the girl is 14 years old and almost a woman, in the Philippines, almost a woman, and at that age, beautiful. And now the father has found a new partner who now sees this lovely daughter almost like she's the other woman. Even though ironically she probably could be classed as being the other woman. Rape, being beaten. One of our students told me the story of how he went from one family to another, one house to another, one home to another, never knowing who he was and where he lived. And when he was about 6 years old, the particular stepfather of the moment used to take delight in putting the child into a rice sack and tying it up and then hoisting that sack into the air on the branch of a tree and leaving the boy there for a long time. That's just one of the things. That of being beaten, as I said, of being raped. We've saved others who have been raped, who were in danger of being raped. This is a high proportion in the Philippines of youngsters who find themselves in a particular situation. So to my friend and to any of our friends who are suffering, suffer it once, move on. Don't pay the bill twice. Don't keep telling your story. We have wept along with the kids that are on our program, and we've wept with them. because their stories are horrendous. But in our case, these children, of course they're children to me, these are 13, 14, 15, in some cases 20 or even more, 22-year-old adults, and they have suffered. But they don't keep suffering over again and again and again. They've moved on. In our case, we feel that we've tried to make life a little easier for them. That's why we do what we do. They need to move on, but they need help in moving on. That's why our program is one of mentoring, as well as helping financially. We try to give them a home that they can feel comfortable in. And our little money, we don't have a great deal to give, but we give what we can. And knowing that you are not special, knowing that there are people out there who have suffered and have survived by saying, this is not going to beat me. I remember the ultimate survival story that I heard, because it involved inflicting pain on oneself. This is very difficult. A man was hiking out in the wilds, somewhere like Arizona, in desert type of country, and he was doing a little rock climbing, and he was in the process of climbing down into a crevasse. In other words, very, very hard rock on both sides, and enough to position himself on either side to be able to climb down. This is an adventurer. And I think that there was an earthquake, and a large boulder fell into the crevice and trapped his arm. So his arm was trapped. He was hanging halfway down because as the crevice narrowed, the boulder became too big to go all the way. But it was big enough to take his hand. It didn't take him very long to realize that he was going to starve to death if he didn't do something. His only weapon was a Swiss Army knife, which, if you've ever seen a Swiss Army knife, it contains a lot of things. It contains a couple of blades, it contains like a little saw, it contains a pair of pliers, all in one thing. Someone, actually my friend Noel in the north of England, sent me one very recently. He decided that he was never going to be able, obviously, to lift this thing off, which of course he tried straight away. He was trapped. He cut off his own arm, and he did it with a Swiss Army knife. Now this is really, possibly in my mind, the ultimate example of facing the reality, refusing to be a victim, refusing to be beaten by it, and moving on. So if you're out there and you are having a huge difficult time, don't look at Beth and I and say, wow, aren't they lucky? It's paradise. Even our little paradise has to be worked on. And we both suffered our losses, which were just as important to us as your losses and heartaches and everything else. It was just as important to us as yours are to you. So I hope that my friend is watching this, because I tried to give him some tough love. I tried to say to him, stop being sorry for yourself, count your blessings and move on with your own set of new rules where you say, I'm not going to fall for that again. The next time I'll be more savvy and I won't be taken in. He was going to cancel his, he is apparently on the verge of cancelling his plan to come and retire in the Philippines, because he's afraid that he can't say no. That was one of the lessons that someone taught me once. I was having trouble saying no to many things. And he said, what you need to do is to go into the bathroom, look in the bathroom mirror, and practice saying no. No. Watch my lips. No. And you can do it, and you can learn it. But if you're going to move on, you need to move on with a new set of rules to which you keep, and you need to move out of that comfort zone that you are in, where the comfort zone by definition means that you are unwilling to change. You need to be willing to change. Okay, I hope it helps. Bye for now.